Hello, I'm Rhys Ingram. I'm a sculptor, specialising mostly in public artwork for different sites, towns, country areas, everywhere. Everywhere and anywhere that someone needs a public sculpture, you'll find me, possibly. Originally, I started off as a training to be a taxidermist for a year. I worked in a museum in Brighton, and I worked with a very strange chap out in North Wales. But I couldn't get any more training, so I thought, well, I'll go to art college and learn to do taxidermy there. I went to Brighton Polytechnic in 1981, 82. And when I got there, they told me taxidermy wasn't art, and so I started carving, because that's what I thought art was carving. And once I'd finished at Brighton, I spent some time working on my own and started to do more public sculpture. And a course was set up in Wimbledon, at Wimbledon School of Art, for site-specific sculpture. And so I did a 2-year part-time MA learning about site-specific sculpture. The materials that I mostly use are wood and stone, and since I've been down in Cornwall, I've been working with granite, because obviously that's the local material. Generally, I started off working in wood, mostly because obviously as a carver that's one of the main materials. But for public sculptures and certain sites, wood's not a particularly brilliant material. It's not 100% durable, and it's sometimes liable to a bit of damage, and stone is obviously a very, very durable material. So I've also had to learn to use stone. But I also worked for a sculptor for a little bit when I was at art college, and he was a stone carver, so I also learnt stone carving from him. Initially, when I started to carve, I started to look at Henry Moore, and then obviously African carvings. I did spend some time as a little boy in Africa, so my house was full of African carvings as well. But as I say, when I was at Brighton, my tutor was a chap called Peter Randall Page, who is a stone carver. Some of you might have heard about his granite carving for Eden, which is the largest granite carving for, I don't know, 1,000 years or something. So he was a great inspiration, because he taught me to look at form and shape, and also the process of carving. Since I've been down in Cornwall and been working in granite, I've been obviously looking at other granite carvings, and so granite crosses and Neolithic monuments around Cornwall. And in particular, one that I found very inspiring recently is a Neolithic burial monument in Brittany called Gavroney, which is lots of incised carvings in the granite. This is fascinating to me because it's obviously thousands of years old, and I'm looking at and thinking about the link between me and them, and that period of time that's stretched between us, and whether or not carving is still relevant to a modern society. I'd like to think it is. At the moment, I'm working on a project with Redruth Town Centre, and they sent me a written brief. They also sent me some information regarding Murdoch and some of his inventions. So I was able to use those and use those as a starting point. The next thing, obviously, I would do is visit the site, and either visit the site with the client or on my own. And actually, sometimes it's obviously useful to be on your own as well, because you can think quietly about it. And when I go to visit the site, I take a camera and I take my sketchbook. And it's important to just make some very quick drawings and responses to the space while you're there. The other thing that is useful to take is a tape measure, because they might send you plans, and plans don't always translate into reality. So what is 5 metres on a plan doesn't look like 5 metres in reality. So a tape measure is really useful as well. My top tip for making public work or designing for public places is an idea to do with your brain has a little box in it, a creative box, and it fills up, and you have to empty the box before it will fill up with new ideas. So it's important to sketch those ideas down very quickly on a piece of paper before the box will refill itself again with new ideas and responses to the drawings that you've made. It started with those little ideas of cylindrical granite benches with marks, a bit like the Gavrini pictures that you've seen, and then combinations of wood and granite and different marks. And I'm thinking about how to make a big solid bench, but using thin pieces of granite rather than big blocks of granite, which we've discovered are difficult to get hold of. And all in all, I suppose that was about half an hour's work. It's important also that you don't spend too long on the drawings, that they're just very quick sketches. They don't have to be spectacular, they just have to be quick marks on the paper, and then you can move on from those. The third top tip is, when you're designing for a space, you need to design what you would like to see in that space. You're a member of the public as much as anyone else, so you have a right to have ideas about what goes in that space. And you mustn't try and create what you think they want to see from you. It must be what you want to do, because you've got to convince the client that it's a good idea. And if you're not convinced, they won't be. When you start designing, I think it's important not to worry about the budget, how much it's going to cost, whether or not your piece can be made for that amount of money, or whether it's practical, whether it can be made from the materials that you're thinking of. It's most important just to think about what it is that you would like to make for that site. Once you've got those designs and those drawings, then you can start to think about the problems, as it were, how much it's going to cost, and whether you can make it in steel or stone or wood or paper. Another top tip is not to spend too much time researching in front of the computer. It's a great danger is to spend 4 hours in front of the computer looking at pictures and inspiration, and not spending enough time with a piece of paper drawing your ideas. What the client wants is your ideas and not someone else's.